Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Happy Catty Crypto here, and as promised I've got Zaradar on, and what a day to have the man, the myth, the legend on a day like today when we really have crushed that 66%. Zaradar, how are you feeling today? How's it all going from your perspective?
I'm feeling very relieved, to be honest. It's been, a long sprint to get here. A lot of people have been putting in a lot of work, and up until maybe a day ago, it looked like, 50-50, but then all of a sudden the last dominoes just started falling, and then we reached the 66% mark when Orion and the last validators upgraded, and now we also got the sexes upgrading. So I think we can safely say that the new release has been completed, and we've gotten past the most short-term critical milestone that we've had so far. So I'm really happy and relieved.
And if you wasn't aware of this, which you definitely are, and I know there'll be people out there that aren't aware of this, but Orion Money have jumped on board, and just having them, people like Allnodes, it just goes to show, doesn't it, that validators really are huddling together themselves, and just everybody wants to work towards this ultimate goal of getting staking back. And with the 66% getting crushed, does that mean it's a done job? Is it, nailed?
It's a done job. When we pass the 66%, the new version becomes the majority client in the network, and then all the validators who don't upgrade, they will eventually get jailed and slashed until they have no more stake left.
And for people that don't know about what slashing is, Zaradar, can you kind of break that down a little bit for them? What happens when a node gets slashed?
So slashing is basically a system that tries to police the behavior of the validators. So it's really no different from your local soccer team, right? If you agree in your team that if you get a yellow card, you pay a quid, and if you get a red card, you pay a $5 to the beer pool or whatever, right? In this sense, the slashing system penalizes certain behavior in the system, like refusal to follow consensus and vote on the next block, or refusal to upgrade the client, and so on. And based on the type of violation, the slashing penalty will vary, and at some point, if the validator doesn't course correct, slashing will take them to 0, and they will inherently get dropped from the reward set. So another active validator who follows consensus can come in and take their place.
Amazing breakdown. I always appreciate you just taking a sec to explain stuff like that, because we have new people joining the space all the time, and it's important to educate the person next to you, the person in front of you, and the person behind you, because people joining the space are new people. They're the people that are going to drive adoption and get us to where we need to go. We can't just sit around as this same. We've always got to keep adding into the huddle and getting new people. Zaradar, how much work has been put in by people into getting us to where we are now? And it's been what would seem like to most a very long time, but it's not. It's very short.
It's quite a lot of work, and to be honest, I would rather maybe just invite Ed in for 5 minutes, because he just pinged me, and have him tell the story of what they've been doing for the last 3 to 4 weeks, because to be quite honest, I've been looking at the algo with the quant team and trying to work on that so we can front run that requirement. So if you can add Ed into the call, I'm sure he would be happy to answer the question.
I can indeed. Let's get Ed. Here we go. Bringing Ed into the call. Hi Ed, welcome onto the channel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Today's just getting better and better for me. It's like Christmas has come 7-8 times in a row today. So me and Zaradar, we were just talking about how much work has been put into getting us to where we are now, Ed, and just the overall experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, it seems like forever, to be honest, but I mean, 3 long months here of work. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like, no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, man. I would rather have you elaborate on the last 2 or 3 weeks where you've been sitting in the lab all the time with Vegas on the
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing working working with the code, you know that Zaradar, but it's another thing working with people. I mean, gosh, how exhausting is that? I don't know. But
Yeah,
yeah, here we
I
are.
agree.
It's
But
never.
I think we really owe it a big gratitude, all of us, because I mean, I know how much time he's been spending on people, basically, while I've had the luxury of hiding behind the code for a change. So I'm really very thankful for all of the effort he put in the last few weeks or so, because I think if it hadn't been for Ed and Vegas, we wouldn't have made it. Right, we would have had the client code out and all of that, but I think one of Ed's great strengths is that he's a very good mediator, and he's been very good at working with TFL and with the validators and you know, the community in general, to align their different requirements and essentially get us to a point where we could get this consensus together and push out the new version.
Yeah, and you've acted as a bridge, haven't you, Ed, between TR and TFL, and kind of working with this LUNCPenguin to get everything merged and complete. Ed, can you kind of break down for people that are confused about V21, V22, and what a merge is? Because there's a lot of people who are quite confused as to what the merge of two code bases actually mean.
Yeah. I mean, that was just, that was really unfortunate, because like, for the past, 3 months, we had planned out V21, and then in the last, I don't know, it was like the last day, it was literally like the last day before it got merged in. TFL did a merge on their own. So they took the code, they merged it in, they called it V21, and then they said, oh, by the way, you know, you might want to take a look at this this 20% validator rule. And I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, they're right. I should move it somewhere else. So I moved it, and then I said, okay, done. Now can you merge it back into V21? And they're like, well, no, because we already released a V21. And so I was like, well, then can you call it like V21 final or something? And then they're like, no, that's not our typical naming scheme. So then we were just like, okay, fine, just do V22. So we have to change everything to V22. But yeah, I mean, it's just a name. It doesn't really mean anything. It's really the code that matters. So.
And there's a lot of people, Ed, that keep saying about, why can't we implement the burn tax now? Why can't we just do it now? If it's there, why can't we implement it? Can you just break that down again? I know you've done it multiple times, but just sort of tread back on that.
Well, you know, for the most part, I would say 95% of our effort has been to make sure that we whatever we do continues the blockchain, continues the functioning of the blockchain, right? So we're mainly focused on not breaking the blockchain, making sure that everything works and is tested and integrated. When it comes to the tax, we've tested that, right? We're confident that it works on chain. The problem is that everybody else in the world that wants to use the blockchain has their own implementations of how to interact with it. And so I think the real effort here is not necessarily on our part, because what we've done, the changes, they work on chain. The problem is with everybody else who interacts with the chain. We just have to let them know that, you know, the code that you had previous probably isn't going to work the way you expect it to, especially if they're calculating the gas fees in a particular way, not querying the treasury keeper for tax rates and tax caps and that sort of thing. So it's in some aspects, it's like we're done, right? We're done with the tax, we're done with the code, it works. In another aspect, it's like now it's up to everybody else who interacts with the chain to fix what they're doing so that they can interact with the chain. So it's a hard thing to coordinate, especially when we don't have control of what everybody else is doing. It's more of like, hey, let's get the word out and see if like we have enough support and you know, confirmation that people understand that this is going to happen and they can adapt accordingly.
Thank you so much, Ed, for breaking that down. A common question that's asked about the burn tax: will people be taxed when they redelegate coins or undelegate coins, Ed? And the rewards, a lot of people are still asking about, will you be taxed on rewards as well?
So the way the tax works is there are particular transactions that when it's passed through the you know, the simulate function to see how much tax would be charged, it's only on a particular set of transactions. So like message sends, which are essentially sending across to different wallets. There's a message execute, which is the smart contracts. But when it comes to like governance, for example, that's a specific type of transaction that passes through without being taxed. Staking is again a different type of transaction that passes through. So all of those like these special things like delegation and rewards and distribution of rewards and all those things, those are different types of transactions, so they shouldn't be taxed.
Thank you so much. So Zaradar, can you talk to us a little bit about what happens tomorrow once the actual block is reached? What can people expect to actually happen?
Nothing. The system will keep functioning as it's done so far.
And there's going to be no kind of halts, anything like that?
No.
So it really has gone as smooth as it could be, and there's been a lot of things happen that we never thought would happen. So are you guys aware of the Binance's announcement today? Do you have like anything to really touch on the Binance announcement?
I think I saw a Twitter post about it. They've upgraded, right? Was that the announcement?
Yeah, so they're going to be upgrading to V21 or V22, whichever way people want to call it. V22. And they're pretty much saying they're going to upgrade to that, and they're going to be what seems to be implementing the 1.2% burn tax.
I don't know if that can be inferred from their statement, because I haven't read it in detail, but I reckon that they will implement the burn tax once the proposal is passed. I don't think they'll do it until then. That wouldn't really make sense, because that would put their traders at a disadvantage compared to the rest of the chain. But overall, I do think they intend to honor their word. They will simply just add 1.2% to the trading fee on the specific pair, and then they'll probably just send the 1.2%, you know, to the burn wallet.
So it's really just more positive movement. Can we speak about the future and what's really next for, I guess, V23, V24? I have no doubt someone that loves to code like yourself and is so entwined, like Ed as well, into just doing all of the work that really does go on behind the scenes, and it can be brain destroying stuff, can't it?
To be honest, once you get the hang of the code base, it's fairly simple to reason about. It takes some time understanding achieving this conceptual mastery. And then there's a caveat in understanding that you're dealing with a state machine that has to behave exactly the way it behaved when a given block was produced. But other than that, it's not too difficult. And I think Ed and we just had a meeting last night. I actually posted about it on the Discord earlier, where we sort of settled on what we think will go into V23. And we're hoping that we can package all of that together as an early Christmas present for the community. But from where we're standing right now, V23 would include the whitelist feature for Binance. But I think in general, we should have a talk in the community about whether or not the whitelist feature should be expanded to basically be controlled through governance. Because I think short term, the community pool will probably be invested in various new business ideas or DApps. And it might make sense for the community to accept them or exempt them from tax as well, to allow them to basically be competitive as a startup, considering that the community pool might invest in their businesses, right? So I think in general we should consider the whitelist as a general purpose feature that the investors of Terra Classic can use if they want to set up, let's call it a free trade zone for certain companies that they want to bring onto the chain, because that gives us a incentive for new businesses to come in. But then other than the whitelist thing, we're going to look at re-enabling the swaps with a hard cap on Lunc, so you can swap from what's called Luna to the Terra pool, which consists of all the different derivatives like USDC and KRT and whatever T. And then you can only swap back into the Luna pool or Lunc if you are above 10 billion cap, which we will not reach in the next few years anyways. And I think that will incentivize or create more utility, or re-enable what I call the killer feature of Terra as a chain, and also allow the USDC investors and the Lunc investors to start working towards re-establishing some sort of economic relationship between these two currencies. And then we're going to look at some quality of life upgrades, like upgrading the open API schemas from the Swagger endpoint so we can start doing code generation, because I estimate that we can eliminate up to 60 or 70% of the existing SDK code simply by using code generation instead. But it requires that we do an upgrade to the metadata discovery endpoints on the Terra D client itself. So that would be the V23 upgrade, and then maybe there would be a few other quality of life things in there. We're also putting in a feature in V23 which will not be enabled, called the ABS system, that I've been working on for the past few weeks with some of the quants. And then that would be it. And the reason why this is the sort of sum of V23 is because that is the stuff that we can put in there without necessarily having to create a hard fork, because I think both Ed and I are very keen on at some point creating a new Genesis and doing a hard fork so we can defrag the chain and clean everything up. And that would then be V24, which would probably hit somewhere around summer, because typically the summertime is a low period anyways for crypto volume and for use in general, because people go on vacations and stuff like that. So that would give us some peace and quiet to basically look at upgrading to V24, which would then include the Cosmos VASM upgrade to 1.0. So we can so we can achieve parity with the other Cosmos SDK chains. And then there will probably be some other new features like activating the ABS system, and I don't know, I'm sure we will come up with other ideas, plus we're also getting feedback from people, but V24 would essentially be our first hard fork. And then we slowly want to basically teach the community that hard forks are not a bad thing if done right. And if we succeed in doing the hard fork correctly, then we will probably look at enabling this Cosmos Visor migration feature, which would then allow us to upgrade validators, because then we could get to a point where synchronizing an update across the entire network would be a matter of hours and wouldn't necessarily require, Ed to spend 2 weeks of his life speed dialing Vegas to get people in line. So that's sort of the short-term roadmap for V23 and 24.
Wow, that has blown me away, especially with the hard fork, to get the better system in place so that we don't have to go through the stress, like you're saying, of doing all of these updates and stuff. So kind of moving off of the subject of the current updates and things like that, are you aware of the Terra shuttle being shut down? Are you both aware of that?
No, I don't even know what Terra shuttle is.
So it's the bridge to the Ethereum blockchain. It's pretty much to do with wrapped Luna, and they've tweeted out on the official Classic Twitter saying it's an important update regarding Terra shuttle and steps users are encouraged to take. If you own shuttle bridged assets, here's what you need to know. And they've pretty much said they're going to be setting the sun on the bridge, and I guess this kind of impacts wrapped Luna users. Is there anything we could do as a collective, as a community, and something that Terra Rebels could do to sort of maybe take this Terra shuttle, fix it because they're saying the gas fees are too high is the issue. Is this something that possibly could be fixed by Terra Rebels, sorry?
I don't know, to be honest. First of all, I think Ed and I agree that we're going to open the IBCs in V25 after the Cosmos Vasim upgrade, because that will allow us to bring back some of the mirrored products and get some of the Osmosis users funds back from the Terra chain and so on. I think with regards to the Terra shuttle, the gas fee that they're complaining about is probably the Ethereum gas fee, and that's not really something we can fix. Right, that's simply just a side effect of the demand on Ethereum, and we can't really control that, right? So people will pay whatever gas fee gets their transaction through, and that turns into a race where the gas fee slowly starts going up as people bid higher and higher to get their transactions approved. That is basically the state that Ethereum is in because its mempool is full, right? What we could look at is basically re-enabling the bridge at a later point if the community decides to somehow help the Wluna users recover their funds. Whether or not that would be a permanent re-enablement depends again on the Ethereum gas, but we could do like a partial re-enablement where we basically just open it up to allow the funds to come back home, I guess you could say, and then just closed it down again until it became economically viable. I do, however, think that the gas cost will fall quite drastically when Ethereum completes their shift to proof of stake. So I think the Ethereum gas problem is sort of like a temporary thing. It will probably not be an issue once they're done with their current merge.
And that's really good, I think, for Wrap Luna users and also the Ethereum side of things, because there are a lot of people that are trapped, so to speak, with everything that's going on and has gone on.
I think it's good for everybody, because I know people like to talk about the next Ethereum killer or the next Bitcoin killer or whatever, but the fact of the matter is that Bitcoin is digital gold and Ethereum is the internet of money, and that will not change in the next 100 years, right? So it benefits everybody to have the Ethereum gas cost go down. And then the rest of us, we can focus on building the application layers around these platforms that Ethereum and Bitcoin provide, which is, you know, the Cosmos SDK ecosystem or the Cardanos or the whoever wants to try to build another type of protocol.
Would you say that having the Ethereum side of things in the Classic chain would also give the option for more projects, more utility to possibly come on board, Zaradar?
But I think the next phase in blockchain tech in general is you know, mergers. The blockchains will become more interoperable. So eventually we will arrive to a point where all the blockchains can talk with one another using WebAssembly as an intermediary.
I always appreciate the answers that there's never something that we get to and you folks are like, yeah, but we're not going to answer that. It's just great to have devs that are there, that people know who you are. They can have confidence in that they are in good hands. So can we speak about this community community pool burn tax? Because I'm sort of the understanding that we shouldn't be burning our own treasury, and going on the DApp side of things, it could be really useful to not have that burn tax in place and possibly send that burn tax to help DApps. Would that possibly be a thing we could work on?
Yeah, I mean, like Ed talked about the other day on the DJ Trish show, we have this thing called, I think it's reward height or reward width or something like that, which basically lets us control how taxes are distributed. And we could extend upon that system given that we had proposals in place. But I think, you know, we have to just also remember that blockchains don't like huge amounts of new features in one deployment, right? You really want to do small incremental updates all the time to ensure that you don't break the chain somehow. So I think this is something that would probably happen, you know, down the line, but I don't know when.
Well, regardless of when it happens, it's definitely going to happen, and I have no doubt you folks are going to be doing everything within your grasp and within your reach to just get us everything that we need to be the community-led crypto that this has become, and it is a real community-led coin, would you folks say?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, looking at I saw a video you did a few days ago about the distribution of different coins like Shiba Inu and Lunc and so on. I mean, like I've said before, we're probably one of the only fair value cryptos at the moment because all the smart money left the train long ago, right? And that means that gives us this opportunity to build up a truly community-driven project. But it really requires everybody to work together and to sort of set aside their differences. Otherwise, we will just be, yet another dead blockchain in a few years.
Yeah, and it kind of comes down to that thing of being left to fight amongst yourselves while the smart money really get into place and take the winnings and stuff like that. We are the community that are leading. We're setting an example and showing that we really can do all of these other things. So it's just going great. Zaradar, can we talk a little bit about USTC and what the plan really is for USTC? Can it be repegged? Could it be held at the peg if it did get repegged?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my views on it is not, popular in the general community, but like I always said, I would try to tell people the truth, regardless of whether they liked it or not. So the situation with regards to USTC is that it can definitely be repegged. It's just a matter of how and when, right? So, like I've said a few times, I'm not a big believer in what we like to call a static peg, right? Where we say USDC magically goes to $1 and then it stays at $1. What we want is a somewhat stable range-bound currency that doesn't have the 20% volatility in a day that you see from regular cryptos. If we can achieve that and have a healthy constant liquidity flow in the system, then I think we can repeg it to $1. I think we can probably create a lot more USTC than is currently in circulation, because like I said before, if we become the Swift layer, for instance, for IoT and the metaverse, then there's not enough USTC in existence right now to solve that problem. But the general problem we have with USDC and Lunc is that originally 1 billion Lunc existed, and then somebody accrued a lot of interest in an anchor thing that was clearly set too high. I think one of the main reasons I didn't invest in Luna sooner was because I didn't like the anchor setup at all, right? I was like 20% interest, what? And that obviously turned into the story that we all know. So the sort of breaking the USTC peg basically spawned 7.6 trillion more Lunc. And that is basically debt, right? And the only way to get rid of that debt is to either burn Lunc or burn USTC. And I personally believe that the easiest way to repeg USTC will be through something we call austerity, which is essentially everybody taking a haircut on the total supply of USTC, because that would then allow us to bring down the amount of circulating USTC to a point where we could fairly easily repeg to $1. And then all of the new investors who came in would be willing to build on that, knowing full well that they didn't have to first burn through 10 billions worth of sweat equity, right? Because that's really the problem that new investors into USTC face, is that they know that if they get into USTC, they have to pay off the debt before the market becomes stable. Because everybody who bought USTC at the bottom, they will sell at $1. I guarantee you that. Right? And that means that we can only ever view the current circulating supply as basically toxic debt. And some people bought up that debt like people buy junk bonds, hoping that it would magically repeg itself to $1. But the fact of the matter is that the repeg won't occur until somebody either brings money in to burn out the debt, or somebody builds enough value to burn out the debt. And these are the things that we are looking at how we can help facilitate. But at the end of the day, this has to be a community-driven effort, because Terra Rebels doesn't have the voting power or the incentive to try and fix this on behalf of everybody else. We will be here to advise and help maintain the code, but this is really an investor problem. And I think what we should really be looking at is reaching out to companies like Arca, who have people that are specialists in debt restructuring, and basically have them come in and help us restructure the debt so we can basically get back on a sustainable path for USTC.
And it's kind of one of the big overhanging issues with the UST is the distribution of the coins right now. We've got around, going off of what metrics we've got, it looks to be heavily sided for the whales. And the top 100 holders own 90-ish% of what's out there, which is scary. So like you're saying, it's just a big ball of debt, isn't it? Sat there waiting for someone to take it under their wing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I really appreciate all of the breakdowns and stuff that you've given us. Zaradar, talk to us just about yourself a little bit and about how you are going to be, you know, what you're going to be doing and how this is all going to move forward from your perspective. What do you think's going to be next for the blockchain?
Well, I think from my perspective, you know, the next a year or two will be basically a foundation building phase where we will get all of these institutions that I've talked with you about in the past up and running independently, so they don't, you know, get influenced by others, and we can get, you know, some sort of decentralized democracy going. Then we need to do the debt restructuring. There's no way around that. That is the only way to fully fix the algo system. And then we need to implement more things into the algo system so it can't break again. And if we can then attract companies and help them build out on top of Terra Classic, I think in a few years' time we will leave our sort of foundation building phase and set off in a new direction to try to regain our top spot on CoinMarketCap and get more utility and more people onto the chain. Because I think one of the strengths that Terra Classic has going for it right now is that we have a fairly high number of active users, more than a lot of other chains out there who are worth a lot more than we are. And I think that the key here is basically flipping a lot of these users into evangelists so they can bring in more users and we can keep the network effect growing. And that will take some time. And you know, if we pass that stage, then I think, you know, we will get back on track, and I think Terra will become, or Terra Classic will become a real thing again.
And I think it already is becoming a real thing, and we've set out to do something and we've achieved it, and you have picked up something that was broken, and there's been as far as I was aware, there's been changes that were made that shouldn't have been actually reversible, right?
In what sense? In the code?
Yeah, in the code. There was some kind of change made, wasn't there, to prevent something being switched back on? Or maybe I'm mistaken. I may be mistaken.
Well, it's more in the sense that changes were made to disable certain modules. Those were the ones we switched on in the new upgrade, which was primarily staking and delegation. Because the way that Cosmos SDK works is that the only difference between what we call a permission chain, like a private chain, and a public chain is whether or not the staking module is enabled. So inherently what TFL did by disabling that module was they flipped the chain from a public chain where anybody could join as a validator into a private chain controlled by the validator set that was already on chain.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate you. Everything that you explain it very well and break it down. A lot of people just think that validators are just there to, you know, you just stake your money with them and you get rewards. But really they commit new blocks, don't they, Zaradar, to the chain, and they're chosen at random, aren't they? As to who.
if I remember correctly, and I might actually be wrong on this, right? So I'll take that as a disclaimer. But I think the way that it works is that the lead validator node will always issue blocks, and then all the other validators in the reward set will basically vote for that block to be produced, and then the rewards will be distributed to everybody. So there's not really like a random block producer. And this is what allows the network to basically achieve its speeds, I guess you could say, whereas proof of work allows random block production. So inherently that's how it works. And then if the top validator were to get superseded, then the block production privileges would go to that, validator instead.
I appreciate it. Can we talk a little bit about the utility side of things, because it's always, it's burn, 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 and we're not really looking so much at the utility side of things. How important is the utility to the blockchain, Zaradar?
Well, I mean, it's everything. Without utility, it will eventually be worth nothing. So I think the burn is an important rallying cry. I don't want people to underestimate the value of psychology and bringing people together, even if the burn is not necessarily the best solution. So I think in general, this is more a matter of just saying, well, some of us has to look ahead, right? For what comes next. That is the job of the devs in general and the business analysts that help craft proposals. Other people, they need to look at the here and now and focus on the present and the people in the community. And that means sustaining the burn tax rallying cry and bringing people together under the banner of the burn tax. And that's just how it has to work, right? That means that I'm not really very focused on what goes on today. I'm looking years into the future because I arrived here in the first place because I've spent the last 8 years of my life researching something that I think will fundamentally alter the way that computing works using blockchains, and in particular the Cosmos SDK. And I'm setting up research projects with some of the other key tech people and Terra rebels like Welcome Me, who's a doctor at the Stockholm University, and Ed and so on, so we can start the preliminary research of that. And that would create utility in a way that most people can't even dream about, because that would allow us to use Terra Classic and any other Cosmos SDK chain as a backbone for enterprise computing. And that is really where the money is when it comes to IT, right? I mean, sure, there's a lot of people on the planet, but Apple and Microsoft has more money than all of those people combined, right? So I think at the end of the day, that is where our focus is vis-a-vis utility. And then the burn tax people who are here now working with the new apps that come in and so on, the people who have to, make sure that there's a future to move into. They will look more at helping, the DApps and helping the movement grow and, stabilizing governance in a way where maybe we can introduce an idea of a Senate where, key people like whatever, Vegas and Ed and yourself or whatever could get voted in as senators to help manage governance for the chain as a whole, because that would make the governance process more efficient, right? But all of that will take a long time to build over the next few years, which I call this foundation phase. But that's my view on utility in general, is that some of us has to look 5-10 years ahead and some of us has to be in the here and now.
You're definitely right there. You are definitely right there. So one of the questions that really come up in the community, and I've just been scrolling through all the proposals, Zaradar, people always say, oh, it's another proposal, but why do we have so many proposals? Can you break it down in the most simplest terms that you can?
Well, the reason why we have many proposals is because that's the cost of freedom, right? If we want to have a decentralized democracy where people, have the freedom to do what they want, then everybody is basically allowed to make a proposal. Whether or not that proposal carries, that's a different matter entirely. But that's how democracies work, right? So in general, we have to do a lot of proposals because that's the only way we ensure some sort of healthy governance. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that 5 people could basically sway the vote, which they probably could, right? There's probably some whales out there who could probably sway the vote if they wanted to, but I don't necessarily think that that is in their interest, because they want the community to grow, right? So they need the community to feel in charge. And that means that I think, we have to just accept that there will be many proposals, because one of our strengths is that we are a very diverse network of people from many different backgrounds. And sometimes the best idea is ignored because everybody else is so busy thinking about their ideas. So I actually like the proposal system, even though it's a bit bureaucratic, I guess. But that's why we have so many proposals, and we should have so many proposals, because that's how democracy works.
That is the best breakdown of breakdowns as to why we need proposals. And this kind of goes back onto you saying about having senators voted in and stuff like that, to make sure that it truly is community led. And my node that I'm going to be bringing has a community behind it with its own governance that's internal, which is all community focused, ensuring that the community have an option for a node. So I really agree with the road and the routes that we are taking, and it's never going to be a dictatorship for the simple fact that everybody has to vote, and people can now vote, can't they, Zaradar, once this all goes through, right? Anyone that holds Lunc can spend Lunc to vote.
Once staking is enabled, they can stake their Lunc with the existing validators, and then they can start voting on proposals.
Absolutely amazing.
Right. Delegate to validator, sorry, but yeah, once you can delegate to a validator in the set, you can start voting.
And delegating and staking is the exact same thing, folks. It's just, I think it's just the way that they term it, so to speak, on Terra Station. So as to tomorrow, we're going to hit that estimated block where we think it's going to land. Is it going to be, all hands up in the air in TR? Is it going to be heads down, everybody at their desks, like, right, on to the next thing? What's it going to be?
I think it's just be business as usual, to be honest. I mean, a lot of us are just relieved, like I said earlier, to be past this particular milestone. And then I think things will calm down for a few weeks, and then people will just keep working on the next thing. So I don't think a lot will change, to be honest.
That's really good. It's comforting to know that you're just going to go. Nothing's going to change. Everything goes back to normal. But are things going to be easier now? Is it going to be as long-winded getting things passed in the future? Does this make everything easier now?
It definitely makes things easier in the sense that I think we have now certified our ability to successfully manage the Terra Classic software by delivering an upgrade that didn't halt the network. And that means that in the future people will probably be more inclined to listen to the advice we give them and work with us when we need them to. And that will obviously make the tech side of things easier. So yes, the release and the upgrade will definitely make our life easier moving ahead. But I think that will only give us more time to focus on writing new code, which is great.
And as you said at the beginning, you've kind of stepped back and taken more of a dev and coding role. Can you talk to us a little bit about that decision and why you made that?
I think in general, I just, I always came into here to focus on building technology and helping people. And I love helping people, but I also love coding. And there's lots of other people in our organization who can help, the general community on our behalf, and there's only a few, let's call them blockchain developers in our group currently. So it's really just it just makes sense for me to focus more on the code and less on the other tasks that other people can do equally well. It doesn't mean I will fade away entirely. It just means I will have a few less public appearances, and I will probably engage a bit less on Discord in certain cases because I want to focus on building technology.
And that's great because, like you said, there's so many people in Terra Rebels, and it's, you know, everybody plays a symbiotic role, and there's no one single person that is responsible for this. It's just a community-led thing. So I know I can thank you on behalf of the whole community, people that are listening, and just from the bottom of my own heart, I thank you all for taking up what you did take up and getting the community pool burn removed and stuff like that is important so we can pay for things, and not so much to pay you folks, but that could be something in the future. You've all worked for free. Not one person has ever received one payment at TR, and it's beautiful to see that you're so entwined. You're going back to just doing soul coding, and it's great, and I really appreciate you coming on, Zaradar. I really do. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but is there anything you want to say to the community before we kind of finish up?
Well, I mean, I would just like to say that I think a lot of people, they tend to want to thank us a lot, but in general, I think it's a rare privilege to be able to be in this position, you know. So I'm equally thankful because at the end of the day, there's lots of people who sit down and try to create blockchains, but we came into an existing community without anybody really knowing us, and they trusted us to fix something, and we proved that trust was worthwhile. That's a two-way relationship where everybody grows. So for me, you know, I'm just thankful to be here. I think it's great that we can work together to maybe create you know, a really community ecosystem, and maybe if we can get past the infighting and all of this, we can get to a point where we can become the good example for all the other blockchains. And if we do that, just that one thing, then I wouldn't worry too much about the liquidity problems and so on, right? Because from a technical perspective, we have a fairly, you know, competitive chain compared to a lot of the other chains out there. So if we can fix the community, be the good example, and work together to try to, you know, create a better world, even though it sounds cheesy, then I think we will all be better people for it.
Absolutely amazing word, and that's exactly why I wanted to hand my node that I created to the community, so then it became our node. Zaradar, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and thanks for everyone that's listening, that takes the time, that's involved in the movement. Regardless of what role you played an important role, like we've been saying. And just stay safe out there, folks. There's a lot of scammers. There'll be some sort of crazy person who can come up with some sort of Einstein scam to scam people out of staking. Remember, if you're staking on Terra Station, you can only stake on Terra Station. So beware, folks, and we'll catch you in the next one. That's goodbye from me and goodbye from Zaradar.
Take care.
We'll catch you in the next one.